business case in, that would come through, that we don't want to lose. And even if it is somebody who we're looking at it and saying, actually, we can't afford to lose that expertise, I'm hoping that there will be a lot of support put in place to manage people through that and to work with people so that we can get them onto this.
Yeah, and that's why the severance option is better, because with the severance, with the settlement, it doesn't have to be an immediate transition. It could be 12 months that we have the agreement that at the end of the 12-month period, once somebody is suitably qualified or the process is automated and changed, that exit can happen. But there are people who are considering their future and want that sort of assurance and security, that they want the succession planning for their own benefits. So it's about opening up that conversation, as you say, and looking at this as a business opportunity for us to innovate the way that we're changing the council, at the same time as meeting those people's aspirations and protecting what we can of the public purse from those very costly and compulsory redundancy situations.
Shall I add to, if that would be helpful? Yeah, so I take the point about capacity as well, and I fully understand it. So I've spent the first few months that I was here having a proper look at that, as well as, I suppose, having spent the last 5 years looking at how other local government organisations like us are structured. And the senior leadership structure that I inherited was set up to fail, in my personal opinion, because we're asking a group of individuals to do two fundamentally opposed things: to be fully operational and all over their day-to-day services, and to try to be strategic and to provide a steer for the rest of the organisation. The model that we're putting in place provides clear separation between what is strategic and what is operational. And actually, at that operational level, we are investing in additional capacity, because I think there are 10 posts at Tier 4 in addition to the 3 assistant directors. And that, for me, that enables those people who are working for the council, who want a longer term career in the council that is more challenging for them. It gives them wider opportunity than the previous structure did. And that's certainly one of the aspirations I've got in developing it.
I certainly echo Dave's concerns as well, because with experience, it's invariably service, but ultimately that experience is hard to replace. So in a situation where you talked about transition, could it be not the case that if somebody was destined to leave because they wanted to, but there was somebody going to come in covering a similar job, they could almost work together for a period, so that there could be cross-fertilization of knowledge before that person left, so that you didn't lose all that knowledge and experience?
Yeah, so I mean, the financial pressures that we have as an organisation are not just this year; they extend for the next 3 financial years. So, provided we can, achieve the leaders or the cabinet's dictate, I suppose, in terms of how we balance the budget going forward, there's absolutely no reason why we can't do that. And again, we would encourage staff to do that where we can. So we haven't got to make all of this go away this year, as it were, Chair. We've got another 3 years or so, so that gives us time to do exactly what you just suggested.
Excellent. One question from me.
Chair,
when I look at the actual scope.
I was going to say, sorry, Chair, no, it's all right. And just on that, with the voluntary severance scheme, it's not going to be anyone who comes forward that will immediately be accepted for it. There's going to be a part of that business case that Chris talks about, is that it's got to be right for Lichfield District Council as well. So if there's somebody who's got such a depth of knowledge that actually it just wouldn't work for our organisation, then I'd certainly expect the business case isn't met, because the organisation needs it. So the needs of the organisation need to be factored in very, very heavily into what we're doing now. And will be. Well,
that was one of my questions. Looking at forms, there's a section where the support manager, the manager may support or not support the application. My question was going to be, if the manager didn't support the application, where does it go? What is the mechanism?
Explain the panel.
Yeah, we're constituting a panel which will include service area specialists, as well as representatives from finance, HR, and from the leadership team, that will assess all of these business case. And it will be a dialogue of how things build up and how the role, if the role needs to continue, how it can be backfilled, and what types of automation, if it's suitable for that, or what types of training would need to happen. So all of that will be encapsulated in those discussions, and that will determine whether or not there is an actual business case there that financially stacks up, as well as the transition point as to how long that would need to be in place for some of them. You know, they could be 12 weeks planning. Some of them it could be 12 months of getting to the point where you can actually realise that business case and make the transition happen.
And finally, from me, in the section which says employees within scope, key services have been excluded. These include statutory offices, which is straightforward, joint waste, which I understand, operational services, building control, and health safety, both of which are shared. Now, my understanding is that statutory services are more likely to be protected, but clearly there are statutory services not in scope. Sorry, in scope rather than not in scope, i.e. planning and environmental health, to name but two. So why are certain activities classified as outside the scope, whereas in fact some of the ones that are in scope are statutory, where some of the ones not within scope are not statutory, such as, say, parks?
Well, the business case will look at any aspect of the role and the service that is statutory, and our primary focus will to make sure that we can still comply with our statutory obligations. That will be non-negotiable in any of the business cases going forward. The reason that the operational services are excluded from this is that members have given us clear steer through cabinet that they don't want those services to be impacted, particularly the joint waste, which is impacts every household every week in terms of the waste collections, and the physicalness of those types of roles, the fact that they are people out and about doing the work in the streets, makes it very, very difficult for the sorts of innovation and change that we're bringing about as part of being a better council, which is about automation and merging types of work together and undertaking similar processes in a more efficient way. So it's really targeted more towards those services that are process driven or casework driven, rather than the physical delivery of services. The shared services, again, because we are obliged to deliver them on behalf of other authorities, they're slightly more complex in terms of bringing forward a business case. They've been excluded from this round. There may be things that we can do through automation with them, but at the moment the main focus is on the main body of work. As Simon said, we'll have this pressure for a couple of years where we will need to look very closely at what we're doing and how we're delivering it. But the fact that we're getting the income in for those shared services and that we're delivering on behalf of the councils at the moment means it's a slightly more difficult task to undertake in the timescales that we have.
Thank you for that explanation. Any further questions, Dave?
I found my notes again. Sorry to both of you.
No, okay.
The first one, in the calculation of weeks service, I'm aware that the vast majority of our staff will be on salary. And most of the ones that I think that might not be and might be on a kind of more seasonal basis would probably be in the services that aren't covered by this. However, in that situation where somebody doesn't have that kind of set weekly, are we going back? Are we doing the standard thing of 3 and 17 weeks and
17-week calculation window?
Yeah. The second one is I don't see anything in here about rights of appeal if someone feels that something's gone wrong. Are we going to have a situation where we're going to have grievances and we're going to have to do things like that?
Obviously, it's a voluntary scheme and it's based on a business case. There will be a continuing dialogue. So we did initially draft it with a right of appeal, but we were challenged on that actually by our local branch because they felt that the dialogue would have been sufficient to iron out any issues that individual might have felt. The problem as well is how we would constitute the panel to have a different level of appeal, because there are going to be a lot of single seats in that panel that we couldn't then replicate at another level as well. I mean, I'm happy to look at that in terms of how we stage it in the dialogue, but it is a voluntary scheme at the end of the day that's based on a business case. So the business case has to stack up.
Yeah, I mean, if Unison have looked at it and said that, then at the end of the day, people who are working every day know.
Yeah, I mean, we enjoy a really open relationship with our branch, and very, very positive discussions, and they work very well with us in recognising what we're trying to do with being a better council and how we're trying to protect and react and respond to the needs and requirements of our employees. So
We absolutely do. I mean, I meet them on a monthly basis with Christy as well, and we have a very open, transparent conversation about things that are going on from their perspective as well.
and we'll continue that throughout this process, because they're on that journey with us as well, and their support and recognising what we're trying to achieve is really, really important to how we want to work as a council going forward as well.
Then the final one is one that might get a bit technical, so apologies if people's eyes start glazing over. On the equality impact assessment, we've said that sex is not a factor in here. Are we concerned, because I am, are we concerned that the exclusion of the service areas in section 3, that seems to me to be the vast majority of the areas where we employ men? So is the potential that we may end up in a situation where someone could look at that and it's absolutely not direct discrimination, but there might be the potential for some indirect.
Yeah, I'm happy to update the wording to reflect that, but we do have a relatively equal spread of office-based staff as well, between men and women.
Well, I mean, we're excluding the joint waste service, because the council as a whole is about 50-50, and if we're excluding the joint waste service, which is overwhelmingly male, then the non-joint waste service is going to be...
it'll be about difference of about 30 or 40 people.
So I think that might be something that we need to go back, because it seems like that's going to be something maybe we need to reevaluate that and make sure that's timed up for us.
I'll have a look at that, assess the wording of that. But I think the business case will need to be able to demonstrate all of the objectives that are set out in the policy outcomes, in terms of being able to demonstrate that best value for us as an organisation, and give us that opportunity for innovation and protect those statutory services being delivered.
Yeah, and again, all I'd add to that is that we've got great data now on the demographics of our services as well, so we can take the point away and have a look at it. Essentially, if we feel that there's a risk, then we'll reflect that.
Yeah, we'll continuously look at the equality impact assessment. We've included it as an item on our employment liaison group, and that'll be something that we'll keep and check. I think we've scheduled a formal review as well by the 31st of July, at the very latest as well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, and I think that will be something worth looking into. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Yes, I will shut up, Chair.
Well, thank you for that. Any other questions, comments? No? Okay. So I think in conclusion then, before we go to recommendations, I think what Christy, the Chief Executive, outlined is that this is a journey. It isn't just something that's going to happen this summer. It's going to be a continuous process as the council basically changes their operation model. So can I take you to recommendations? 2.1, it's recommended that the Employment Committee approves the voluntary severance policy set out in Appendix 1, and to open a window for expressions of interest between the 6th and 27th of June 2020. And recommendation 2.2, that suitable business cases are developed to identify employees who can be granted severance packages for consideration by this committee, and for funding such a scheme to be approved by full council in July. Now, how about Councillor Roberts?
I'd feel a little more comfortable on recommendation 2.1 if we followed it with subject to that equality impact assessment being updated for that, because that's a real financial risk to this council if we get that wrong.
With that, members, are we agreeable to that amendment?
Yeah,
yes,
we are.
So all those in favour? So that concludes that item. So we then move to item 5, which is exclusion of the press and public.